Is this idea of I want to be a creator so people will love me and I will get a steady source of income from work that I've already done and I don't have to do anything. That is just this great fallacy to me. Creativity and the projects that we take on, we do it because we want the challenge. We want to be in there. We want to be doing it. And if it's not why we're doing it, then it's a business venture and it's not a creative venture. Welcome to the podcast, Tapping Creativity, with myself, Matthew C. Temple. And each week, we're going to dive into questions and issues and inspiration around creativity and the creative process. Often at the beginning of a creative project, so many of us, and I am super guilty of this, end up finding ourselves imagining the project completed, imagining the accolades. Because I think one of the things that we've, or at least I've been taught in my sort of upbringing, I think it's very much cultural, is that complete is somehow better than incomplete. Therefore, when something's incomplete, it's lacking something, which I guess is probably true in some ways. But the other thing is that complete is also done. It's dead. It has no more life left in it. When a painting is being painted, for example, it's every day it evolves, it grows, it changes. As soon as it's complete, it goes and it sits on the wall and it's done there, So the creativity that sparked it no longer actually lives in the painting. Now, hopefully, if we do our creative work well enough, that actually then reflects something back to us, and each person who comes in contact with it has their own life and their own inspiration that comes from it. And that's kind of what we hope to do as creatives. But that's also a pretty tall order, and there's a lot of hubris and ego type, wrapped up in, I'm going to make a painting, I'm going to make a movie, I'm going to make a song so impactful that people are going to remember this forever, or that it's going to have some kind of, reverberating effects. And obviously, it would be great. A lot of us don't want to just create for, the sake of, making ourselves feel better. Granted, there are a lot of people who do, and that's a wonderful way of creating, but I don't think that's necessarily those of us that are here today, right? We want to create something, get it out in the world, and ideally you want it to have an impact. You want people to be touched by it. But in a lot of ways, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because, the creative process is that journey. And I'll probably hammer this over and over and over again because I think it's so important. But one of the things that when we tie up our ego into it and the stuff of completion, then it gets this thing that the process of it is somehow less valuable than the completed project itself. And that is just this great fallacy to me. That process is alive. It continues to grow and evolve only when we are actually creating it. And so I could kind of pose this question, like, why do we imagine it done? Why do we imagine it complete and finished? When if we want to be creatives, we actually want to be creating, or is this idea of I want to be a creator so that I can, people will love me and I will get a steady source of income from work that I've already done and I don't have to do anything. That sounds like a miserable existence to me. To me, the joy is in creating. So if that's the case, then why do I want it to be done? Fortunately, over the last several years, I've been able to wring that more and more out of I don't want to say my creative process because it's not really part of the creative process, but wring that out of the stuff that sneaks its way into me. When I filmed Hardball: The Girls of Summer, and I had been, I'd been in Korea, I'd been around the States filming, and I'd been working on this project for a year, probably before I really got into the editing. And then the editor got a complete project together, and we're working every day together, and and working on she had an assembly, and we're working on this. And then I remember it was late. We'd been working like a 12-hour day. It was really hot in LA, and I thought, I'm just going to go on a walk and kind of clear my head. And as I'm going out, all of a sudden, like my Oscar acceptance speech starts kind of like popping into my brain, and it's totally embarrassing, but it's totally true. I wrote 3 different versions of it on that walk. But one of the things, and granted it's fun, and I'm not going to get too down on myself for it, but the other side of that is that there I was, like I had another probably a year and a half, I think, before I actually took that movie from where it was till it was really completed. Till I actually had a good movie. At that moment, I had a crappy movie. Hadn't even really scratched the surface, And I think that stuff can really, can come in. Sometimes in a project like, a documentary that took, I forget exactly, 3 years or something, It's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, and to be living with it and to continue to working on it and thinking, oh, is this thing ever going to be done? But, it was it really did need to grow and evolve. It needed all of my creative energy, and it needed to take that much time. And when I think back, there was this little lesson that I really needed to learn, which is that this process of creating it is actually what I'm here for. And when it's not done, it's simply not done. And that's not a problem. It's not a referendum on my lack of talent. I could pile all sorts of different things onto it, but I think at the end of the day, the reality is that the creative process is a process, and it just takes the time, and it's worth it not to be jumping ahead to, hey, when this thing is done, then I'll be something. Then I'll mean something. Then I'll be a great artist. Then I can do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and I just be prolific, and I just make stuff and make stuff. And that's there might be times in our lives when that, or it may never be in our lives, or it's for other people. But the reality is that that creativity and the projects that we take on, we do it because we want the challenge. We want to be in there. We want to be doing it. And if it's not why we're doing it, if we're doing it because we just want, good residuals, then that's just a different process. Then it's a business venture and it's not a creative venture. And yeah, we love those things to overlap. I'm very blessed that those things have overlapped enough in my life that I can make a living doing it. But on the flip side of it, that's also, I actually also have to have that total enjoyment of the process in order to be able to keep going when the going gets tough. So anyway, curious your thoughts on that and how you deal with it, and how many of us have written Oscar speeches, Grammy speeches, Emmy speeches, or that sort of like phone call from mom, like, hey, I saw your thing on TV, or I saw you written up in the magazine, and that kind of validation. Like, what are we doing it for? And begin to, separate some of those things out from each other. So that way, yeah, it's okay to want accolades. It's okay to want mom's approval. It's okay to want some money, but to separate those things out so that the creativity side gets to be really pure. Looking forward to next week. Have a great creative week. And remember, reach out with any thoughts, questions, or anything you might need help with. Be well.